April 13th, 2022. The Black Sea. The Russian cruiser Moskva sits at anchor 40 miles south of Odesa. She is the flagship of the most powerful naval force in the region. 186 meters of reinforced steel, 16 Vulcan anti-ship missiles, an S-300F air defense system capable of swatting aircraft from the sky at ranges of 75 kilometers. Her crew of 510 men believes they are completely untouchable. They couldn't be more wrong. The Moskva was not simply a warship. She was a symbol. Since the first day of the invasion, she had haunted Ukrainian coastal waters like a spectre. It was her crew that broadcast the infamous demand to the 13 Ukrainian border guards on Snake Island: surrender or face destruction. It was her guns and her missiles that gave Russia's Black Sea fleet its teeth. Losing her would not just be a military setback, it would be a catastrophic humiliation delivered in front of the entire watching world. Vladimir Putin understood this. His naval commanders understood this. They had positioned the Moskva at the center of their Black Sea strategy for exactly that reason. She projected invincibility. She was meant to be permanent. What the Russians did not fully understand was that Ukraine had spent months building a weapon specifically designed to kill her. And on the evening of April 13th, that weapon was ready. The Neptune anti-ship missile had been developed by Ukraine in the 1990s, but never successfully deployed in combat until that moment. The original design had stalled for 2 decades, a victim of post-Soviet budget constraints and political instability. In the years before the invasion, Ukrainian engineers had resurrected the project, conducting test launches and refining the missile's guidance systems. The weapon operated on principles that had proven effective in naval warfare since the 1980s: fly low, stay subsonic, present a minimal radar signature, strike without warning. But Ukraine's version had been tailored specifically to Black Sea conditions. The designers understood the sea's unique characteristics, the prevailing wind patterns, the typical radar configurations of Russian warships. The Neptune was a weapon born from years of patient preparation, then suddenly activated by necessity. 2 production variants had been quietly manufactured. Both had been transported to a coastal position near Odesa over the preceding weeks. The attack on the Moskva represented not an improvisation, but the culmination of a strategic plan that had been germinating in Ukrainian defense circles since long before the February invasion. The attack began with misdirection. A Ukrainian Bayraktar TB-2 drone appeared in the Moskva's airspace. It was not there to destroy anything, it was there to distract. The drone forced the Moskva's crew to activate their radar systems and focus their attention upward. They were looking at the sky. They were not looking at the sea. Beneath the surface of the water, moving at speed toward the cruiser's hull, came 2 R-360 Neptune anti-ship missiles. The Neptune is a subsonic sea-skimming weapon, flying at wave height to avoid radar detection. Each one carries a warhead of 150 kilograms of high explosive. The Moskva's S-300F air defense system, the only such system in the entire Black Sea fleet, was compromised. Its radar had been blinded at the critical moment. The missiles struck the ship's port side in rapid succession. Fires erupted immediately. Ammunition began cooking off in secondary explosions that tore through the vessel's interior compartments. By the following morning, the Moskva had capsized and sunk to the floor of the Black Sea. She was the largest Russian warship destroyed in combat since the Second World War. She was the first Russian flagship sunk since the Knyaz Suvorov in 1905 during the Russo-Japanese War. Russia did not officially acknowledge the loss for nearly 4 years. On January 22, 2026, a Moscow military court formally confirmed what the entire world already knew. The flagship was gone. But this was only the beginning. The sinking of the Moskva created a wound in Russia's Black Sea strategy that went far deeper than the loss of a single vessel. The cruiser had been the only ship in the entire fleet equipped with long-range area air defense. Without her, the remaining warships were suddenly exposed. They had lost their umbrella. Within days of the sinking, Russia moved 5 other warships back from the Ukrainian coastline. The fleet that had been confidently patrolling within strike range of Odesa quietly retreated east. The retreat was supposed to be temporary. That assumption would collapse completely. Ukraine's military had drawn a critical lesson from the Moskva attack. Deception worked, electronic interference worked. Targeting the radar and the sensors before targeting the hull worked. They began systematically applying that doctrine across the entire fleet. What followed was not a single dramatic battle. It was a slow, methodical dismantling, conducted piece by piece, ship by ship, over the course of 2 years. In May 2022, Ukraine destroyed the Rapusha-class landing ship Saratov with a Neptune missile strike northwest of Ilychivsk. The ship was attempting to deliver supplies to Russian-held positions when the anti-ship missile found its mark. The strike killed approximately 60 crew members and destroyed the vessel's ability to operate. 2 weeks later, the tank landing ship Shuya was hit by a similar strike, damaged but not sunk, in a coordinated attack that demonstrated Ukraine had not simply gotten lucky once, but had developed a repeatable operational capability. The Russian Navy found itself in a position it had not expected to face. It was being hunted. The balance of power in the Black Sea, so thoroughly dominated by Russian military assets just months earlier, was shifting. Every day that passed without a loss made the next loss more catastrophic in its psychological impact. Ukraine did not have a navy, not in any traditional sense. There were no destroyers, no frigates, no carrier-based aircraft flying combat air patrols over contested waters. What Ukraine had was something Russia's naval planners had never seriously prepared to face: autonomous unmanned surface vessels packed with explosives and guided by satellite navigation and live video feeds. The MAGURA V-5C drone is 5.5 meters long. It weighs close to 1 metric ton. It carries an explosive payload capable of punching through the hull of a warship. Its low radar cross-section makes it extraordinarily difficult to detect at night or in rough sea conditions. Its maximum operational range stretches to 800 kilometers. A single MAGURA costs a fraction of the ships it destroys. Ukraine began deploying them in swarms. Multiple drones would approach a target simultaneously from different vectors, forcing defensive crews to track several threats at once and dramatically increasing the probability that at least one would reach its destination. The tactic was brutally effective. Russian warships that had casually patrolled the open sea now found themselves hunted in their own harbors. The first successful MAGURA attack on a Russian warship occurred in August 2022. A patrol boat escorting a logistics convoy near Cape Tarkankut was struck and seriously damaged, its hull ruptured by the drone's explosive charge. The crew managed to reach shallow water and beach the vessel, but she was rendered combat ineffective. By September 2022, drone boat attacks had become frequent enough that Russia issued standing orders restricting smaller warships from operating in shallow coastal waters without armed escort. By October 2022, even the prospect of armed escort had become insufficient. A corvette attempting to provide escort protection was itself struck by a sea drone, a strike that killed 17 sailors and damaged the ship's propulsion system. Russia's naval doctrine had been built on assumptions about naval warfare that no longer applied. The weapons Ukraine wielded were not expensive, did not require trained pilots or sophisticated support infrastructure, and could be replenished faster than Russian ships could be replaced. Sevastopol had been Russia's Black Sea Fleet headquarters for generations. It was the crown jewel of Russian naval infrastructure in the region, a deep natural harbour on Crimea's southwestern coast, capable of sheltering the entire fleet and providing the dry dock facilities necessary to keep warships operational. Ukraine struck it relentlessly. Drone boats penetrated the harbor's defenses. Cruise missiles targeted the naval headquarters building directly. On September 22, 2023, a Ukrainian strike destroyed the fleet's command center inside Sevastopol with a salvo of Storm Shadow cruise missiles. Senior officers were killed. Classified communications infrastructure was obliterated. The message was unambiguous. Sevastopol was no longer safe. Russia made the decision to relocate the bulk of its surviving fleet east to Novorossiysk, a port on the Russian mainland across the Kerch Strait. It was supposed to be beyond the reach of Ukrainian weapons. Then things got worse. The relocation to Novorossiysk exposed the depth of Russia's strategic miscalculation. The port, located across the Kerch Strait on the Taman Peninsula, was indeed further from Ukrainian-held territory than Sevastopol. But it was not far enough. The straight-line distance from Ukrainian-controlled coast to Novorossiysk was approximately 140 kilometers. For a conventional naval power, this distance would have provided substantial security. For Ukraine, operating drone systems with ranges exceeding 400 kilometers, the distance was meaningless. More critically, Novorossiysk was not designed to accommodate an entire fleet taking shelter simultaneously. The facilities were more limited than Sevastopol's. Ships were forced to anchor in close proximity to one another, creating a target-rich environment where a single successful strike could damage multiple vessels. The crowding also meant that damage to one ship increased the probability of collateral damage spreading to adjacent vessels through fire, shock waves, or secondary explosions. Ukraine had anticipated the relocation. Engineers had already been developing extended-range drone systems capable of crossing the open Black Sea to reach the new base. The Sea Baby and Mamai drones represented a significant leap forward in unmanned naval capability. They could travel nearly 500 miles across open water. Some were configured to carry explosive payloads for direct ship attacks. Others were adapted to deploy naval mines, seeding shipping lanes with hidden threats that would surface days or weeks later. Novorossiysk, which Russian commanders had designated as their sanctuary, came under attack. Ships docked at the supposedly secure mainland base were struck. The large landing ship Olenogorski Gornyak was seriously damaged in Novorossiysk harbor in August 2023. The psychological effect on the remaining fleet was profound. There was no safe water left. In November 2023, the Russian frigate Admiral Makarov, one of the fleet's most modern vessels, was struck by a drone boat attack while sheltering in Novorossiysk. The strike damaged her hull severely enough to force her removal from operational service for extended repairs. The frigate became a casualty, not through any traditional naval engagement, but through the methodical application of asymmetrical warfare doctrine. 2 months later, another frigate, the Admiral Essen, suffered similar damage from a drone attack while attempting transit through the Black Sea's eastern waters. The pattern became clear to everyone observing the conflict. Russia's fleet was not being defeated in battle. It was being dismantled through systematic attrition, each strike removing a ship from active duty, each loss reducing the fleet's collective capacity to project power. Russia still did not fully understand the scope of the problem it faced. The fleet was not simply being attrited in combat, it was being systematically degraded as an operational system. Ukraine's targeting philosophy went well beyond sinking individual ships. Ukrainian precision strikes hit the dry dock facilities at Sevastopol, destroying the infrastructure required to conduct major hull repairs. The Bosporus Strait had been closed to Russian military vessels by Turkey under the Montreux Convention at the outbreak of the war. This meant that any Russian warship requiring extensive maintenance could not transit to the Black Sea Fleet's alternate repair facilities in the Mediterranean. The fleet was trapped. Ships that suffered damage short of outright sinking could not be fully repaired. Combat readiness fell steadily. By mid-2024, the British Ministry of Defence formally classified the Black Sea Fleet as functionally inactive. In July of that year, Russia pulled its last remaining patrol ship out of Crimea entirely. The waters around Sevastopol, once crowded with the hulls of Russian warships, fell quiet. The numbers tell a story that is almost impossible to overstate. Before the war, the Black Sea Fleet represented the most powerful concentrated naval force in the region. By early 2025, Ukraine had destroyed or rendered inoperable an estimated 29 ships and submarines. Approximately 30% of the entire fleet had been eliminated. The Kalibr cruise missile, Russia's primary naval strike weapon, the same weapon used to bombard Ukrainian cities from the Black Sea in the opening weeks of the invasion, could now be launched from just 5 surface ships and 2 submarines. Pre-war, Russia had boasted of deploying naval strike groupings to multiple positions across the Black Sea and even into the Mediterranean. Now those vessels sheltered together in Novorossiysk, rarely leaving port, their operational tempo reduced to occasional missile salvos, fired from a single fixed location. Every ship Ukraine sank or disabled shrank the Kalibr launching capacity Moscow depended upon to hit Ukrainian infrastructure. Every strike pushed the fleet further toward combat irrelevance. What happened next changed the calculus permanently. The Kerch Bridge, the 4-kilometer span connecting mainland Russia to occupied Crimea, had been one of the most heavily defended structures in the theatre. Putin personally opened it in 2018. It was a symbol of Russia's annexation, a physical manifestation of permanent control over the peninsula. Ukrainian sea drones and naval mines began targeting it. The first successful strike came in October 2022, when a truck bomb caused partial structural collapse. Subsequent attacks using drone boats damaged it further. The bridge's disruption compounded the fleet's logistical difficulties, complicating supply lines into Crimea and adding pressure to an already strained military posture. Even Kerch, the eastern edge of occupied Crimea, which Russian planners had long assumed existed in a relatively protected rear area, proved to be within Ukrainian reach. A strike on the Zaliv shipyard in Kerch in September 2023 hit a Kilo-class submarine and a Rapucha-class landing ship simultaneously while both were in dry dock. The attack was not just a strike on 2 vessels. It was a strike on Russia's entire naval modernization program in the region. The fleet that Putin had envisioned as an instrument of dominance, a force capable of blockading Ukrainian ports, projecting power into the eastern Mediterranean, and providing the maritime foundation for Russian regional hegemony, now sheltered in deteriorating infrastructure at a port under constant drone threat. The remaining warships rarely sortied. Submarines crept close to port rather than patrolling open water. The admirals who once commanded freedom of movement across the entire Black Sea now managed a defensive posture from a single congested harbour. Admiral Makarov, her sister frigate Admiral Essen, 3 Buyan-class corvettes, and 2 improved Kilo-class submarines, 7 vessels, represented what was left of meaningful Black Sea Fleet combat power. All 7 sheltering in Novorossiysk. All 7 effectively contained. On May 9, 2026, Russia held its annual Victory Day parade on Moscow's Red Square. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, no tanks rolled across the cobblestones, no missile systems were displayed. The Russian Defense Ministry cited the current operational situation as the official reason. The real reason was simpler. The equipment was at the front, and there was not enough of it left to parade and fight simultaneously. The Black Sea Fleet, that was supposed to secure Russia's southern flank and strangle Ukraine's access to global markets, had become something else entirely. It had become a liability, a collection of aging hulls hiding from drone boats built in Ukrainian workshops for a fraction of their own construction cost.